know how most B2B founders and leaders start with a great product or service, some early wins, and then growth stalls. Pipeline's unpredictable, marketing and sales can't seem to stay in sync, and every quarter feels like starting from zero. I've been there. I lived that chaos, and I've helped teams build the systems that fix it. I'm Javier Lozano, and this is Predictable B2B Growth, where we talk about how to turn that chaos into marketing and sales systems. Every week, I break down what's actually working to align teams, build repeatable pipeline, and scale revenue in the real world. Sometimes it's just me. Other times, you'll hear from founders, leaders, and operators who've actually done it in tech, services, the built world, and smart buildings. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Nick Turner, CEO of Dreamdata, a company helping B2B teams bring all of their go-to-market data together to drive more predictable pipeline. Nick has spent the last 20 years scaling SaaS companies from early stage through high growth phases, and more recently led Dreamdata through a $55 million fundraise in a very competitive market. He brings a unique perspective on how AI is reshaping go-to-market without losing sight of the fundamentals that actually drive predictable growth. Enjoy the show. Hey, Nick, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to join me on this podcast. I've really been following what you've been doing on LinkedIn for quite some time and just really love the content that you're posting. And so before we kind of start diving into a lot of these questions that I have to ask you, just tell us a little bit more about your background and just so we can learn a little bit more about, what you're doing right now as CEO at Dreamdata and just kind of how you got here.
Yeah, of course. So like you said, my name is Nick Turner. I'm the CEO here at Dreamdata. I originally joined as CRO 2 years ago and took over the CEO role actually a year ago almost today. So it wasn't an April Fool's joke. It actually happened. So I am here in seat now. Prior to that, I had 20 years of experience leading go-to-market teams, in particular in the B2B SaaS space, and I would say in a very specific segment of that, which was both in MarTech as well as in the Series C to Series B, Series C space, and that's where we are. We're a Series B company, but yeah, that's my background. Yeah,
That's awesome. And so, when we were talking before we jumped into the podcast, you kind of we're talking about the fundraising, and this is kind of where I really want to kind of start diving into one of my first questions here, because Dreamdata is now a Series B company. So you raised a $55 million raise last November. Is that correct?
yeah, we closed October 7th. Yeah.
Okay, October 7th. And so, you spoke with 74 investors to close a $55 million raise. And, the market's obsessed with this whole AI native startup, and Dreamdata has been around since 2018. Is that correct?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so, when you finally got to that term sheet, what was some of the specific predictability metrics, if you will, that they fell in love with? And was it the AI roadmap, or was it the boring, beautiful, like go-to-market math? Like, what was it?
Yeah. I mean, there's two components here, and especially when it comes to raising a Series B, predictability becomes a big part of that. But also, last summer when we went out and we're fundraising, and even still now, obviously AI is the hot topic. I think it's, we couldn't pretend that we were AI native. We were, created in 2018 prior to, and when everyone says AI, what they really mean is, there's lots of types of AI, but, what they mean is the LLM style AI, the generative AI. And so, the thing that I like to say is that, look, you're not, just because you're not AI native doesn't mean you can't learn to speak AI. I was my English is my original language. I spent time learning Spanish, and so no, I wasn't a native speaking Spanish, but I learned to speak it. I think that's the same thing that you can apply to moving from SaaS to AI. I do think that if you look at like maybe the three major ways to deliver value in software over the last 20 to 30 years, even before that, you have on-prem, you have SaaS, and now you have kind of AI. All of those are just different methods of delivering value through software, in my view. And so it doesn't mean that people that are SaaS can't continue to deliver value. but I think it's clear that utilizing AI in your platform is going to deliver a lot of value to your customers. We're still working out. I say we. I think both internally at Dreamdata and collectively as a market, I think we're still working out what does that look like? How do you deliver value utilizing AI to your customers?
Yeah.
But that's what I would have to say about that. I'm not a fan of buzzwords. I'm much more like to think about is this a is this a good way to deliver value to customers? And if it is, then we should certainly be looking at how we do that.
I want to double click in that a little bit too, because I feel as though like, and AI has been around a lot longer than we're giving it credit, but it's really taken off these last 2, maybe 3 years. Like it's just exploded. And it's like the joke in the marketing world where a company wants to hire a marketing unicorn that is basically like 4 years removed from college and then has 20 years of like SaaS experience. I'm like, what? That doesn't really exist. And so like you're kind of basically saying that in a different way in the business world, like, and so I'm glad that you're bringing light to this, because all these companies and all these people that are wanting this whole like we need AI native, like guys, like this is literally being built as we are speaking, and so you know what do you think about that?
Well, I think in the initial years of something new coming to light, especially in the enterprise side of things, a lot of that money comes from innovation budgets, and an innovation budget said, "Oh, this is exploratory," and everybody opened up the floodgate to innovation budgets for AI. Of course, everybody wanted to find out, hey, can this deliver value? And this kind of relates to hype cycles and where you're at in a hype cycle for new innovations. I don't know where we're at. I don't know. I am not smart enough. I'm smart enough not to say anything about it, and I'm smart enough to know that I don't know enough about it to speak. But
Yeah,
I do think that there's part of the cycle is like you're at the peak of kind of the hype, and then you have a trough of disillusionment, and then you kind of glide into something that's somewhere between the total hype and the disillusionment, where you're still getting more value from it. And I just don't know where we are in that phase. I will say that there's definitely some disillusionment happening from what I can see, where people are adopting it. They're not seeing the results that they got from the hype that
yep,
they expected from the hype.
yeah.
I'm going to say very clearly that I am not opposed to AI. I really love it. We have it utilized in our product, and we're going to keep using more of it as we understand how customers want to use it. I think that's the key thing. Like you cannot build a product and search for a solution. No, you need to find a problem and build a solution to that. And if it happens that you're utilizing AI to do that, then that's a very good thing. As long as you're delivering more value through all the work that you did, the R&D that you did on that innovation that actually justifies what you've done. So,
I I love what you're saying about that is building what customers want, because I feel as though founders and CEOs get married to these ideas of like, no, this is what the market needs. And they start putting stuff out in the marketplace, and like the marketplace is clearly saying, nope, not interested. And you're looking at it from the other lens of it's not just delivering value, but making sure we're putting the market and getting that feedback loop from our customer base so that we're not wasting dollars and time and resources to developing something that no one cares about.
yeah, I don't have a reality distortion field that I can rely on as a person. That's not who I am. The only thing that I can rely on is listening to customers and trying to figure out, what are their problems and how do we fix it. And by the way, our product team does most of that also. I listen and I give feedback to our product team, but largely I trust our product team to go out there, do the interviews, figure out what's working and what's not, look at our usage data, see what people love to use in our product, and then proceed accordingly. The idea that the founders are, and to be clear, I'm not the founder of Dreamdata.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think those are like really one in the million shots where somebody says, "Hey, I have this idea," and it turns out everyone loves it. That's not a high probability shot, and
yeah,
I'm not the kind of person that takes those shots. If I talked about the stage, and I tend to play in. I'm not a 0 to 1 type person. I just, I'm much more of an operator, and I can help to scale companies. And if there are like problems in go to market, then I feel I really excel on that. If I'm good, I'm better on that side of things than anywhere else in the company.
yeah,
Um, so anyway, I think listening to customers, you It's funny that you have to say it, but like that's something that you should do. You know, like, yeah,
I've had conversations with founders and CEOs sometimes, and it's tough because it's like you don't want to come in rude and say like I don't think you're right, and I'm not the expert in all the industries. I'm not implying that, but what I'm getting to is that like if people aren't buying this, it's not because like it it's not because the customer is wrong or whatever. It's like it probably doesn't really solve the problem that you think it's solving. And so it's almost as though you got to do a little bit more investigating. You got to do a little bit more digging. Are people trying to like hodgepodge these like, duct taping all these things to create a solution to make something happen, And so that's something that, I mean, clearly is it's a big conversation that I'm sure that you were probably having conversations in boardrooms whenever you were going fundraising, where are these are there problems here that you're trying to solve? And I'm sure those are the conversations like investors are asking. Am I right?
it depends. I mean, in a Series B conversation, it's a little bit different. I think if you are a pre-seed or a seed investor, that is absolutely the conversation that you're having. They want to know, okay, what's the new thing or what's the new thing? If you've read that, like, what are you building that's going to solve problems 10 or 20 years from now, as opposed to what's happening today? And so they're looking for someone that can say, look, I know this is a problem now, and it's going to be an even bigger problem in 20 years. And the market size right now might be small, but it's going to balloon in size. AI is a great example of that. Having guardrails for AI is like I think a good example of what everyone's like. There was a story that came out from Amazon recently where they felt they didn't have guardrails in place, this specifically, and that's a huge problem. You saw how much money that they lost in just a 3 to 4 hour window because they didn't have guardrails on how they're utilizing AI within their engineering team. And
Yeah.
so somebody I'm sure saw that and said, "Oh, I'm going to build a solution to that." Because I know that Amazon's not the only one experiencing that problem.
Yeah. That's huge too. I mean, like, and I know it's silly to, to talk about building guardrails, but it's so true though. I mean, whenever I work with clients on the fractional side, I'm building guardrails as far as like, hey, this is our goal. We know this is what we're trying to achieve, and
Right.
this is our strategy, and these are our tactics. But these are the guardrails. This is what we're going to be playing in, and anything outside of these guardrails, we don't look into those things. And so it's really important to know that you got to lay those foundations correctly. So love that. Um, you know, you've had several conversations when it came to fundraising. And so I'm pretty sure by meeting 50, you were telling investors that what you weren't really telling them is probably a different meeting from like meeting one. Like, so the story kind of changed a little bit, not, bad, but you're probably getting feedback is probably what I'm assuming. And so how did your definition of predictable growth evolve during that summer, during that time frame?
Yeah. I think that the metrics, like once you get to Series B, the metrics are the metrics. You're either showing good growth and good retention or you're not. And I think what you're looking for is predictability there. You're not going out and saying, I think we can achieve product market fit by X date. What you're really saying is like, hey, we have really strong traction and product market fit, and here are the results of that. These are our growth numbers, these are our retention numbers, and then this is the opportunity for the rest of the market, and we're looking for growth capital or something like that. I think that's the conversation that you're having, versus saying, we're going to build this this new thing. Excuse me. The other thing I'll say is that it was interesting last summer because, of course, AI, like I just said before, big topic, and everyone wants to know, okay, how are you becoming AI native? Which again is not a thing that you can do. You can't become AI native. You can put AI into your product, of course, and utilize it to deliver value for your customers. Um, and so anyway, I think that was certainly part of the conversation. So the things that changed weren't necessarily, I would say they weren't major, because at that point in time, metrics are the metrics, and that's what people care about the most. But they did want to know, what is your AI story. And so we think a lot about in go to market, because that's what we do. We're in B2B specifically, and we're marketing attribution. We build for marketers. That's what we've always done. That's what we always will do. We are fully focused on that user persona. ICP might change from like an account or company profile, but it's always going to be B2B marketers for us. And so there wasn't a whole lot that we could change. What we could do is say, look, this is where we're strong. We're excellent on the data side, and we're building agents that can layer over top of that. And that is, I think, if I get into kind of SaaS versus AI, which I kind of hate to do. Again, I don't like the buzzword side of this. I really think about what's the value from both of them. But
Yeah.
if you do want to get into that discussion, it comes down to, what are your strengths as a SaaS company versus what are the strengths of a company that's starting fresh right now? Fresh, a blank canvas can be pretty exciting. But you also don't have a lot of the infrastructure in place when you're doing that. So it's actually pretty straightforward to build an agent now. Building now is pretty easy. That's why I think you really that's why I stress the idea of focus on an ICP or user persona, because it gets so easy to build. You think, oh, I'll build for these 5 user personas, and that's just not going to work when it comes to positioning and branding and messaging.
Yeah.
How are you going to make sure that your positioning and branding and messaging speaks to this one person? And then you're off also trying to talk to sales leaders, or even within the marketing department. You're diversifying. I don't think that's right either. Um, anyway, I'm getting away from kind of the kind of the question and the answer here, but I think that those things are super critical when you're thinking about how you're going to develop these products and get them to market.
I think that's great. And so, I know that so what you're saying is as you went to the Series B,
Mhm.
you had things that are already working that and it was just a matter of like kind of shaping the narrative correctly. How do companies that are looking to go from, pre-seed to Series A or Series A to Series B, how do they start creating a little bit more of that predictability to help them tell that story correctly, to help them position themselves to where they can go to market and start, trying to get some capital raising? Like, what is it that Dreamdata did that was kind of unique to kind of get you guys prepared to do that?
Series A to Series B was very much all about focus. I joined the company, like I said, in early 2024. And, part of my reasoning was that, look, first off, I tried to build what Dreamdata had built several times before internally and completely failed at it. And so
Okay.
seeing that they had built an amazing product really helped me, and I could see the usage of the product. I said, there's a huge opportunity here, because I felt the pain of this problem and we want to solve it. Uh, but what we do could also be spread across many, many user personas. And, it could span marketing and span into sales. And so we really locked in on focusing on just a couple of user personas, and that helped us, I think, both on the user persona side as well as ICP. So what type of account were we going after? And when we
Yeah.
brought that focus, markets are always bigger than what you think they are. And so people are sometimes afraid in the early days to focus, but I think you should focus and focus on, we're going to really become the go-to player within this segment of our market, and we're going to show that we can kind of dominate this market. And then once we do that, then you can decide, okay, should we expand our ICP? Are we happy with the growth we have? Do we see more growth in this ICP, or should we expand it? So I think focus, to me, I'll always stress that is super important. But if I look at like the 3 metrics that I cared a lot about, it was growth rate, and investors care a lot about, of course. It's growth rate. That's what investors, I for sure, care about. We have a little disagreement with some investors around retention. So a lot of investors will focus on net revenue retention in the early days of a company. I think that's a huge mistake. I think it gives permission to companies to not focus. And what I mean is, net revenue retention is a composite metric. So if people aren't familiar with what that means, it is your base of revenue
Okay.
plus any sales that you make to that base of revenue. And so you can hide problems when you focus on that metric. And it could, people will go to growth at all costs, which means that they'll sell to anybody. And if you're selling to anybody, then you're going to hurt your churn, I think. And so
Interesting.
we kind of immediately switched from focusing on net revenue retention to focusing on gross dollar retention. It means that you have to have discipline on your sales team. It means that you have to have focus on what you're trying to pursue. And I think that helps a lot with your retention if you go there and then figure out, okay, what's my second product line that I can utilize to improve my net revenue retention and not just
Yeah.
focus on retaining customers, but also growing the business within that customer. Does that make sense?
No, it 100% does, and I love that you're sharing that because that's something that I keep, harping down with this as well too, as I work with, or talk to different prospects and work with clients is that they talk about like, well, we want to do this and we want to do this. And I'm like, guys, like we need to find one wedge and we need to crush it. Like one thing that we can go in there, like your worst salesperson can close this all day long, and hopefully you don't have that situation. But my where I'm getting to is getting so good at having this one wedge, this one go to market that you are so confident in, and then you start putting more fuel to the fire in that. And it's kind of like what you're saying is that that's how you get to those, and then you start looking at metrics within that to start kind of determining like, are we ready to start adding another product line? Are we ready to start going up market for this or maybe going down market for this? Like it just depends on where you're at. It's kind of what you're trying to imply. Is that right?
Yeah, and actually, I will say this: even after the raise, quite literally, I'm sitting in this room. Our lead investor from Peakspan, Matt, was here, and we were talking about getting even more focused because of what we were seeing from one segment. And so, even after raising that funding, I think
Yeah.
again, you'd be surprised at how big of a segment it could be,
Yeah.
and trying to narrow the focus even more after that funding. I know that sounds kind of crazy to people, but that was that we had that conversation and we were talking about should we focus more to help improve the metrics for the business. I missed one metric, and I'll just summarize for everyone if you need. But I talked about growth rate, I talked about gross dollar retention, and then also the third one I didn't talk about was burn multiple, and
Yes.
how much cash you're spending to actually add a dollar of revenue to your. So if you're spending, obviously you're spending over a dollar to add a dollar, then you're burning cash, and if you're under, then hey, you're probably in a decent, very good spot. And so we lowered our burn multiple considerably. When I joined, we had 50 employees. We 3x the size of the business from a revenue perspective, and we still had 50 employees.
Oh,
And
that's
and so
awesome.
and so I think if you in today's world, I really kind of for 10 years, more than 10 years, I lived in a world where money was almost free. Interest rates were nothing. I lived in a world previous to that. But from 2010 until 2022, 2021, money was just free. And
Yeah.
and people paid a lot less attention to building like a profitable business. I've had bad experiences in not building a profitable business. And so I learned my lesson. We talked about like touching hot stoves the other day. Like I've touched a lot of
Yeah.
hot stoves. And so I think, make sure that you focus on that burn multiple as well. And I just want to be clear, like this advice is not for someone that's going from seed to Series A. Totally different conversation. Series A to Series B or Series C. That is what I think you need to focus on is showing repeatability, and that hey, if we added $50 million to um our banks, then we would be able to scale this business because the market's there. We know what to do. We just need to do more of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. This is great. I could talk about this all day long, but I'm gonna have to shift a little bit. Sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah.
So you recently had a post about kind of like a 30-day blackout challenge, if you will, where you are challenging leaders to essentially, turn off performance marketing for say 30 days. And if an AI driven growth engine does that and leaders or lead flow starts dropping to let's say zero, is the brand weak or is the AI just capturing demand that would have been found, somewhere
Right.
else? Like, where's your head on that?
Hey, real quick, if what we're talking about today hits home and your pipeline still feels unpredictable, then don't sweat it anymore. I put together the Predictable Pipeline Diagnostic. It's a quick 7-part assessment that you can run in under 20 minutes to pinpoint where your revenue system is actually leaking, whether it's market demand or finding your ICP, sales and marketing alignment, building go-to-market systems, RevOps, metrics, the whole engine. You can grab it for free at bouldermediasolutions.com/pipeline. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, that is like it is obviously I posted for a reason because it's a hot topic. Like
I
not that
know.
I think marketers are pulling their hair out because y- you know companies live in quarter cycles. That's just
Yes.
what they do. CFOs, by the way, I was a CRO. I had marketing report to me. I ruined it. And I think
Oh,
it's important
really?
to call out. Yeah.
Okay.
Not that I didn't learn, again, hot stove. I learned my lesson, but
No, I understand. I don't want to call you out by any means, but not very
no.
many people admit that.
Well, I think that, as a sales leader, you either live on monthly or quarterly cycles. Like that's what you
Yeah.
do. You know, you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
target on your back. I understand that pain. And then if you end up with marketing under your belt, you're like, okay, well, where are the leads for this quarter? I said, well, it takes, we just published a LinkedIn benchmark report, and it takes 272 days from that first touch point all the way to a closed one deal. That's on average. And
Yeah.
so we're talking I don't know, is that 9, 10 months, something? Yeah, maybe 9 months, let's
Yeah.
call
Yeah. Roughly.
it 30 days. So 9 months. So think about that. Like, if you tried to compress that down into like a 90-day cycle, all you're going to be doing is trying to capture existing, people that are hunting right now and looking. Now, that means that you have not built up any brand with that customer. And I can tell you, like, giving, I think of it as like air cover for SDRs or for AEs that are doing outreach. An SDR is much more likely to get a meeting if they know your brand, if the customer knows your brand, than if they don't. And so there's a hard press right now for marketers to remove their brand spend, and I think what that's going to do to companies. Obviously, I have a lot of opinions about this, but what that will do to companies in the long term is it's going to dry up your pipeline, and it's going to ruin your conversion rate, because you end up being Peter, our CFO, he affectionately refers to it as column fodder, which means that, oh, column fodders, that means somebody already knows who they want to buy. Then procurement says, I need a competing bid. And so then the person goes out and gets a competing bid. And of course, the person has decided they want to buy this other platform. And so they mold the RFP or whatever they're doing to help to please procurement to focus on this other person. So your sales team is going to spend so much time kind of trying to position themselves to win that deal when they don't even know they've already lost it. And
Interesting.
so I think that that to me gets to the heart of the problem with this 95/5 debate, and CFOs and CROs and CEOs trying to tell people that trying to tell marketers, hey, where are the leads today? Is that, well, you should have asked me 9 months ago.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you're shedding light there, because I feel as though, I mean, this is a conversation I had a lot with our VP of revenue, and it's a lot of education. It's a lot of, but you have to have that, from a marketing leadership standpoint to a revenue leadership standpoint. Like, you have to have that, like, tied to the hip, and you have to see each other eye to eye. Like, you may not agree with everything. And really, I look at it as like offense and defense. Like, let's say that sales is offense, and marketing is defense. And where I'm getting to is, like, you have to win together as a team. And so there is a strategy in how brand is worked and measured. You can't use those same metrics as you would use demand, and lead gen, or capture, and how you're working those same kind of like strategies. And so you've got to use those accordingly, and you have to pull certain levers at different moments and times, knowing that one is going to be a future investment, like an investment to the S&P 500, if you will, while another one is going to be like crypto investment, if you will. Not saying go invest in crypto, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's like you can get immediate returns, like literally tomorrow if you wanted to. Like, it could be crazy and you could lose everything tomorrow as well too. But
Exactly.
they work almost hand in hand, I feel like. Is that kind of what you're saying too?
100%. Yes. Like, I think that um, it just won't show up as soon as you want. Like, you're going to decrease your investment in brand, and then
Yeah.
you're going to feel the pain 9 months later. You know, like, people have too short of a time horizon on in their minds right now when they're trying to say, let's decrease on the brand side and let's focus on demand. And you
Yeah.
can overspend on demand for people that were already in market anyway, that might be looking at you anyway. I think that's the problem that I have with it. Uh, Obviously, there's marketers struggle constantly with, how do you prove this? I run an attribution platform, so, but I'm going to say this, like, you can't prove everything that works. Like, you can see a ton of what's working. You can see a ton of the data, and we're
Yeah.
getting better and better. Like right
Yeah.
now, what we see is 81% of the buyer journey. It's all marketing before sales even gets involved. 81%.
Interesting.
And so,
Really?
again, this is in the benchmark report we just did. Uh, Last year we saw it was 70/30. And I've been asking myself this question. I'm wondering, well, wait, are buyers just spending less time in market, or has it always been this way and we just couldn't measure it yet?
Huh. You know, no, go
The,
ahead. I'm sorry. Sorry. Keep going.
it's like 20 years ago, I was an account executive, and I could, quite easily, uh, I knew a lot more about there was information asymmetry, right? And that has gotten to be less and less. And the role of a salesperson has changed a lot, where they're coming in near the very end. They're an important part of this. Don't get me wrong, but they're kind of the anchor man in this relay race, and their job is to talk more about how do I purchase as opposed to what should I purchase and why should I purchase it. There's so much information out there now for buyers that the salesperson is no longer has that information like under lock and key. It's all available for people to see. And with AI, that's only going to accelerate this process I think, of sellers, again, play a super important role. I don't want salespeople to hate me, but because I grew up in sales, but it is, the role is changing a lot in terms of what they do in market.
I like where you're coming with this. Are you familiar with Chet Holmes? He's an author. He wrote a book called The
So
Ultimate
yeah,
Sales Machine.
I definitely know
I was
of.
gonna say, like, as a CRO, you probably read or know of that book.
I've at least read the clip notes.
Okay.
So
Anyways, I've read the book.
yeah.
I love it. He has a whole bunch of different kind of cool strategies in there that are, I think they're timeless or evergreen. And one of the things he's talking about is his breakdown is like 3% is in market, and then like I want to say like 6% or 7% are like aware that they need a solution, but they're not really quite shopping. It goes along with what you're talking about. Like, you mean the 3% is, let's just call it 5%, whatever. And then the other 95% is like everything else. And you can kind of chop those up a little bit based off of like where buyers are. But where I'm getting, where you're saying is that there is those people that are in the bottom, you've got to get them solution aware of like, this is going to be something that's going to be hitting you soon. Like, I think one of the examples he uses tires. Like no one right now is in the market to buy tires except for 3%. And then, when your tires start kind of going bald almost, like, maybe I should start looking at tires. And then so you start working your way up towards being that 3% in market, So that's kind of what you're sharing as well too, right?
That's it. Yeah, I mean, everybody needs tires. Like, I got a haircut this weekend. Everybody, most everybody is going to cut their hair, and
Exactly.
making sure, and that's one of those things where you're not necessarily going. I don't think you're going to create demand for a haircut, right? Like people they're going to get a haircut when they need one, and
Exactly.
when they need one, then you need to be there.
Yeah.
And if
And
you
so
weren't
like,
there previously, then not a good spot. So
yeah, that makes sense. And so like, I feel as though AI is great at targeting that 5% who are buying, like helping us get there. And so how do you use AI to win the mental availability battle where the other 95% without sounding like you're a robot? And so, your stat with what you were saying that how 81% of marketing influence, I mean, that's pretty compelling.
yeah, I think when it comes to AI and go to market, there's one key thing that people should think about. Marketers have permission to automate communication. Salespeople do not. And so
Yeah, I was
I'll
like,
break that
double
down.
click into that.
Yeah. So marketers over the last 10 years, look at what's happened.
Okay.
Marketers, their conversion rates have improved as they've gotten better technology or better context. Context is a popular word these days. Gotten better context on how they should speak to their buyers, right? Now, every buyer knows that marketers are not speaking to them one on one, right? Now, a salesperson, that is expected to be a personal conversation. You're expected to be on the phone with someone or in an email or on a video call or in a meeting or having dinner, whatever. Those are considered personal things that are happening. If you look at the last 10 years for sales teams, and don't get me wrong, these tools have their place. We use them. But if you look at, I'm not going to name names. I'm trying not to. if you look at platforms that do automated sequencing, things like that, at the conversion rate, because of those things, cold calling conversion rates have gone way, way down. Email conversion rates have gone way, way down because we're trying to automate something that buyers haven't given us permission to automate. And so they expect from a salesperson for this to be personal and that they're dealing with another human being. And so that's why I think in a world of AI, like in go to market, marketers are far better prepared to utilize automation because they've had to in their day-to-day work for years, and they have permission to use it. Whereas sales teams do not have permission to use it. And so if sales teams try to automate communication with customers, they don't like it.
Yeah. And I can see both sides of that. At my last in-house role, we created I'll make this really quick, but we created basically we're generating so many leads inbound, and we had a very small team, and so we're like, how do you contact 1,000 leads per AE, which is hard, like almost
Yeah.
impossible. And how do you do it by not sending out marketing emails because that's not going to inbox correctly? It's going to be flagged as promotion, and on top of that, like the open rates are like atrocious, and compared to what it could be from like a sales based email. So what we were doing is we were doing sales based communication coming out of their Gmail account as though they wrote an email to Tom, but we were doing it based off of like where they were in the journey, if you will. So like if they dropped off at different stages, we would have something that was kind of along the lines of that communication, and it would be automated, and it would be also an automated text. But it came out like as though like one of the AEs literally wrote out an email to Tom,
Sure.
and the open rates were like 40 to 50%. The reply rates were through the roof on depending on where they were, if they were like early stage or if they were like late stage. So we did this, and it was a way to create hand raisers for our sales team so that they can have true conversations with them. And so like what we were thinking about was like, let's compress the sales cycle. Let's see if we can hammer them for like 7 or 8 days, get them on the phone. And then after that, and again, this was all automated so that the sales team didn't have to be like typing these things out.
Right.
And then from there, what they would do is like, okay, nothing really worked. Let's do indoctrination. So kind of like educate them a little bit, but still coming from a sales perspective. And if
Yep.
nothing happened, then what we would do is then we would recycle that lead to another AE after 30 days, and it would just restart a new conversation, and it would just kind of be, perpetual. It just kind of happen
Oh,
naturally.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, like it's so we played with what you're talking about, but we were kind of like doing both sides of it in a sense, trying to create that personal conversation, like what we would normally send, but then also using automations as well too.
Yeah. There's a gray area there that I think
Yes,
is
it
really
is.
there's a very gray area where if you got a hand raiser where someone is saying, I need this solution, right? You look at the platforms that are kind of designed to handle that gray area where, okay, we're getting close to needing to have a real conversation with a real person.
Yes.
And so to me, what you did, this is also congrats on all the leads. Like that's awesome. But, and having to automate it, like it's clear that there's a problem there to solve. But I think you want to get to a place where, um, you're preparing that. To me, I would say you're preparing a salesperson for a call. Maybe, you're trying, and you're maybe like we do a couple things where we may send out a quick questionnaire before the call. That's automated. So we can gather the details so that we can have a good call. We can give people what they want to see on that first call that we have with them, with a customer or a prospect, and between them and the AE. So
Yeah.
definitely a gray area there where, and I would also kind of argue that that is again kind of AI encroaching a little bit on what the
Correct.
team does. And there are, you know, right now you could argue, well, you could utilize an AI agent to close deals that are sub 10K, or pick a cutoff. I'm not sure what it is. There are
Yeah.
some like random stats around. Oh, I used an AI agent to close a 110K deal. I saw that this morning somewhere on a podcast, and maybe that happens, but it's
Yeah.
not standard, right? It's something that may happen out of the blue. But
Yeah.
you're getting to a point where deals that are sub 10K, that's also can be kind of PLG, and you don't need a salesperson involved, but you can make it a better experience with an agent, by making it a bit more personalized with them. So
Yeah. No, I think that makes complete sense. And, it was, when we were running this strategy, it was like, well, we're resource constrained. So we, cracked the code on how to get inbound. It's just like, how do we make our team not call every single one? And so how do we create prioritization for them? And then after they go through like the prioritizations and, you get the drill, then you go through the other ones. They're like, okay, well, maybe this one is like, they open an email, they, whatever. And you just keep doing that. But no, I definitely get where you're coming from on that. That makes sense. Well, we're getting close to the end, and so what I'd love to do is just if you can give us a little bit of insight. You're not one of you're very few CEOs that take the time to talk to other people, and so you spend I think 3 hours a day talking one on one with marketers, and so like I think which is I think is amazing, and you actually publicly share that. Am I correct?
Yeah, on my LinkedIn profile, I would say I set aside 3 hours. I don't always spend 3 hours. If people don't book it, then I don't use it, right?
Yeah. I get it.
I've got that set aside in my calendar. If people book it, there's nothing more important right now. I was saying earlier that it's getting easier and easier to build, but it's building the right thing. And the only way you can build the right thing is if you're talking to your customers. And so that to me is just really critical. So I made a commitment to do that. And also kind of as a setting maybe a standard for the team that, hey, listening to customers is super important. We're not here without them. So let's make sure that we get their feedback.
I love that. And so where I want to kind of like, ask this last piece is like, after all the AI hype and the $55 million fundraise and what is the one human truth about B2B growth that hasn't changed since 2018?
Sorry
Since,
about what growth, B2B growth.
yes. What's the
What
one human truth that,
thing
about,
has not
yeah.
changed? Oh man, that's a great question. Let me think about that a little bit. What hasn't changed since 2018? I would
And
say
this is, based from Dreamdata, being around
I
that
think
long.
the same thing that I said before is just that, we resisted for a long time, like putting AI driven attribution on the website because I hate buzzwords and
Yeah.
I think, what does that mean? Like what value is that actually driving? You can call a product whatever you want to call it. But what really comes down to at the end of the day is what value you're driving for customers. And so I do come back to, even if it's very generic and simple, is that if you're not giving any value to your customer, then you're not going to be around for very long.
Yeah.
And so the end goal of a company is not to build a company that can sell a deal for 1 year. The end goal is to be there for the long term and be a good partner. So I think
Awesome.
for me, it is you- getting away from the buzz and really focusing on what problem am I solving for the customer. So
Yeah.
I think that will never change. So
I love that. And I mean, I feel like we've come full circle with what we've, just discussed. And so, Nick, I really appreciate you taking the time, sitting down and kind of sharing a little bit more about just your experience, your thoughts about sales, marketing, all of that. How can people find you? How can they connect with you? Where should we send
I
them?
think always, on LinkedIn, Nick Turner, CEO of Dreamdata. That's, I think, easy enough to find. And then if they want to chat, my calendar link is right there on LinkedIn for everyone to see if they want to book time with me. And there's always our website, dreamdata.io. But I would love to chat whether or not we're a fit for you. I'd just love to hear feedback on, what the pains of being a B2B marketer today, and if I can do anything to help. So
Awesome. Well, Nick, this was great. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of great value out of this, especially for folks that are trying to create that predictable growth as they're going down and pre-seed Series A, B, C, et cetera, and just kind of learn a little bit more about your thoughts. So thanks again for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to Predictable B2B Growth. If you want these frameworks in a simple weekly email, including what I'm seeing work right now, subscribe to my private newsletter at bouldermediasolutions.com/newsletter. You can also connect directly with me on LinkedIn, where I post daily sharing my marketing playbook strategies. And yes, I actually reply. I'm Javier, and thanks for tuning in.